Here in the next few minutes, I will be explaining how to play I Don't Trust Myself with Loving You from John Mayer. Now before we begin, I would like to say that I am in standard tuning, and throughout this explanation I'm going to refer to my strings by their letter names. The top string is the low E, the second from the top is the A, the third from the top is the D, the fourth from the top string is known as the G, the fifth from the top is the B string, and my bottom string I will call the high E string. Now throughout this song, during this song I'm going to be explaining the introduction. I will be explaining the main rhythmic pattern that's played throughout this entire song. I will be teaching the bridge and the guitar solo. But first, the song begins. I'm going to first be explaining the introduction, and to run through the introduction one time in real speed will sound like this. For the introduction here, I've broken it down into 4 parts. In part 1, we begin. You're going to take your ring finger and you're going to place it here on the 4th fret of your A string. You're going to pick that note one time, and after you pick it, you're going to slide up to the 7th fret of the A. That will sound like this. Once you slid up to the 7th fret of the A string, you will then take your pointer finger and place it on the 5th fret of your D. You'll pick that note one time. Then following that, place your ring finger on the 7th fret of your D and pick that note one time. So far we have this in part 1 played slow. Following that, you're going to drop your pointer finger down to the 5th fret of your G. You're going to pick that note one time. Then you will place your ring finger back onto the 7th fret of your D string and you'll pick that note once. So far here in part 1 we have this played slow. Then after that you're going to place your pinky onto the 8th fret of your B string. You're going to pick that note, and immediately after you've picked it, you'll pick your pinky up off the board to stop the note from ringing out. That will sound like this. And then after that, you'll move your pinky up one string to the 8th fret of your G. You're going to pick it, and then after you've picked it here, you're going to slide to the 7th fret of your G string. That will sound like this. So far here in part 1, we have this all together played slow. Then after we've slid from the 8th fret to the 7th fret of the G, you will then place your pointer finger onto the 5th fret of your G. You'll play that note one time. And then you'll leave your pointer finger right there on the 5th fret of your G. What you'll do next is you'll place your ring finger on the 7th fret of your D string. You'll play that once. And then after that, you'll pick your ring finger out of the way. You'll play the 5th fret of your G one time. And this time, after we've played it, you will play a vibrato here. So that'll sound like this. So all together here in part 1 we have this played slow. And then after that you will place your ring finger onto the 7th fret of your G. You're going to pick it, and after you've picked it you're going to slowly push that note up the neck a full step. It will sound like this. And by doing that, that will end part 1 of the introduction. Part 1 played all together in slow. So that's part 1 played slow, part 1 played in real speed. So that's part 1 played in real speed. For part 2, what we're going to do is we're going to, once again, we'll begin at the same. We will play the 4th fret of our A with our ring finger and slide up to the 7th fret of the A string. That will sound like this to begin part 2 of the introduction. Following that, you will play the 5th fret of your D string, then play the 7th fret of your D with your ring finger, then play the 5th fret of your G, and then play the 7th fret of your D once again. So far here in part 2, we have this played slow. Following that, place your pinky onto the 8th fret of your B string, pick it, and then pick your pinky up off the board. After that, move your pinky up 1 string to the 8th fret of your G. You'll pick that note and then slide down to the 7th fret of the G string. It will sound like this. So far we have this in part 2 played slow. After we've slid down, you will then play the 5th fret of your G with your pointer finger. Then place your ring finger onto the 7th fret of your D string here, and you'll play that note once. So far here in part 2, we have this played slow. And then what you're going to do after we played the 7th fret of our D, which was the last thing we talked about, is you'll move your pointer finger up to the 5th fret of your D string. You're going to pick that note, and after you've picked it, you will hammer on to the 7th fret of the D string, and after you've hammered on, you will then play a vibrato there, so it'll sound like this. And that will end the second part of the introduction. It played all together in slow. Part 2 played in roll speed. Parts 1 and 2 played together in roll speed. And now for part 3. Part 3 of the introduction is exactly the same as part 1, so I'll just play part 1 once again. A quick review is this. So that's part 3, it's part 1. Here's parts 1, 2, and 3 played all together in real speed. And now for the 4th and final part of the introduction here, we're going to once again begin by playing the 4th fret of our A and sliding up to the 7th fret. It will sound like this. Once you get to the 7th fret of your A, right below it, you'll place your pinky on the 7th fret of your D and you'll play that note. So far here in part 4, we had this played slow. And then following that, what you're going to do is you're going to place your pointer finger onto the 4th fret of your G. You're going to pick that note one time. Then place your middle finger on the 5th fret of your G and play that once. So far here in part 4, we have this played slow. And then after we played the 5th fret of our G, what you're going to do is you'll move your middle finger out of the way. Place your pointer finger here on the 4th fret of your G string, and what we're going to do is this. I'm going to pick the G string one time here, and after I've done it, I'm going to take my middle finger and I'm going to hammer onto the 5th fret of the G and then immediately pull back off. That will sound like this. And to look at that from this angle here, looks like this. So far here in part 4, we have this all together played slow. And then following that, you're going to place your pinky on the 7th fret of your D string, play that one time. Then place your middle finger on the 5th fret of your D and play that one time. So far here in part 4 of the introduction, we have this played slow. And then after that, what you're going to do is you're going to place your ring finger onto the 5th fret of your A. You're going to pick it and then slide up to the 7th fret of the A. It will sound like this. Then what you're going to do is you're going to continue to press down firmly with your ring finger. We're now going to pick the 7th fret of our A and slide back down to the 5th fret. So all together here in part 4, we have this played slow. And then after that, you'll place your pointer finger on the 3rd fret of your A. You'll pick it and then pick your pointer finger up off the board. Then you will once again press down firmly with your pointer finger here on the 3rd fret of your A. You'll pick it once again, and this time you'll play a vibrato. Now that ends part 4. Part 4 played all together in slow. Part 4 played in real speed. And now here's parts 1 through 4 that make up the introduction, played together in real speed. So that's parts 1 through 4 played together in real speed. The song begins. We will run through that. We'll run through parts 1 through 4 together only one time. And then immediately after that, we move into rhythm figure 1. And now rhythm figure 1 is going to be something that's going to be heard throughout most of the song. It makes up the verses and the chorus. Now here I'm going to run through rhythm figure 1 one time, and then I will break it down. But first, here's rhythm figure 1 played one time in real speed. Rhythm figure 1 consists of 3 chords here in our chord progression. The first chord that we're going to take a look at is known as an A minor 7 with an added 4th. This chord is fretted by taking your pointer finger and placing it here on the 3rd fret of your B string. Then you want to take your pinky and place it on the 5th fret of your G, and directly above it place your ring finger on the 5th fret of your D. So that's the chord there. The 3 notes that we have pressed down now are going to be the 5th fret of the D, the 5th fret of the G, and then the 3rd fret of the B string. And like I said before, the name of this chord is an A minor 7 with an added 4th. And now what you're going to do is this. We're not going to strum this chord with our pick. What you're going to do is I hold my pick just like I usually do, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my middle finger and I'm going to place it underneath my D string. I'm going to take my ring finger, I'm going to place it underneath the G, and then I take my pinky and I place it underneath the B. So I've got those 3 fingers underneath those 3 strings. And what we're going to do is we're going to be plucking these strings rather than picking them. So to do it one time will sound like this. Okay, now what we're going to do here with our first chord is we're going to pluck those 3 notes together at the same time. We'll pluck them together a total of 3 times. To do that will sound like this, played slow. And in real speed it will sound like this. And then following that, the second chord in our chord progression is known as a C major. In this position it is played by placing your pointer finger on the 8th fret of your B string, place your middle finger on the 9th fret of your G, and place your ring finger on the 10th fret of your D string. And now what we're going to do here is we're going to hold that chord and we're going to pluck the same 3 strings. We're going to pluck those 3 notes at the same time. Here, we're going to be plucking these notes together a total of 5 times. To do that, slowly will sound like this. And in real speed, it will sound like this. So far, with our first 2 chords, we have this played in real speed. And then for the third and final chord using the chord progression, is our last shape that we had. We're going to basically just move it up so that your pointer finger is now on the 13th fret of your B, your middle finger is on the 14th fret of your G, and your ring finger is now on the 15th fret of your D string. And once again, we're going to be plucking these 3 notes. You'll just hold the chord with your fretting hand and then pluck the 3 notes at the same time. Here we will play these 3 notes together a total of 8 times. It will sound like this played slow. And in real speed it will sound like this. And that will make up our rhythmic figures chord progression here. To play it all together in real speed will sound like this. So that's rhythm figure 1. What we're going to do is the song begins, you'll play the introduction, you'll run through parts 1 through 4, a total of 1 time. And then after that, we're going to play rhythm figure 1. We'll run through that chord progression. We'll play it a total of 8 times. And after we played it our 8th time, then we're going to play a little fill. It's something that we've already went over. What it is it's just parts 1 and 2 of the introduction, which is this. And then after you've done that, you will then play rhythm figure 1. Once again, we will play it 8 more times. You'll run through the chord progression a total of 8 times. And then after you've done it your 8th time, we will then move into the bridge. And now here what I want to do is I want to first run through the bridge. I'll run through what's going to be happening here. I'll run through it 1 time and then explain it. But here I'm going to play it 1 time in real speed. It will sound like this. So that's what the bridge consists of. That's 1 run through. Now to break that down, I've broken it down into 2 parts. In the first part, what we're going to do is it begins by taking your middle finger and placing it on the 9th fret of your G. And then take your ring finger and place it on the 10th fret of your D string. So those are the 2 notes I have pressed down there. Be sure that your ring finger is curved in a way so that it's not touching the string below it, your G string. So the 2 notes I have pressed down are, with my ring finger I have the 10th fret of the D, and with my middle finger I have the 9th fret of the G. I'm going to pick my D and my G strings together. It will sound like this. And then after that, I'm going to leave those 2 fingers where they are. I'm going to take my pinky and I'm going to place it here on the 10th fret of the G. And then I'm going to once again pick the D and the G strings together. So far here in part 1 we have this played slow. And now here for the bridge in part 1, we're going to do that a total of 2 times. So to play that 2 times slowly will sound like this. And in real speed, part 1 will sound like this. And then for part 2 of the bridge, we're going to move our original shape. We're going to move it down the neck of the guitar so that your middle finger will stop at the 4th fret of your G and your ring finger is now at the 5th fret of your D string. And now throughout the second part of the bridge, you're going to leave those 2 fingers right where they are, which is my ring finger is on the 5th fret of the D string and my middle finger is sitting on the 4th fret of the G. Now to begin in part 2, we're going to pick our D and our G strings together. And then after that, just as we did before, here we're going to add our pinky to the 5th fret of the G. You'll leave your other 2 fingers where they are. Once again, pick the D and the G strings together. So far here in part 2, we have this played slow. And now what's going to happen here in part 2 of the bridge is we're going to repeat. We're going to play what I just played. We will play it a total of 6 times. To do it slowly will sound like this. So that's part 2 played slow, part 2 played in real speed. And now here's parts 1 and 2 that make up our bridge, chord progression, and riff. Parts 1 and 2 played together 1 time and real speed will sound like this. So that's our bridge chord progression. And now what we're going to do here is so far the entire order of the song goes like this. We play our introduction, we play parts 1 through 4 together a total of 1 time. And then we play rhythm figure 1 8 times. And then we play parts 1 and 2 of our introductory riff 1 time. And then we play rhythm figure 1 8 more times. And then after that we'll play our bridge chord progression, we'll play it 3 times. Now here I want to do that, I'm going to play the bridge 3 times. To do that in real speed will sound like this. So that's our bridge. I played it 3 times. After that, we're going to move into a transition, and I've labeled it, this is going to be labeled as the transition. We will see this one more time in the song. This is played immediately after we've played the bridge 3 times like what I just did there. We will then play this little riff here. It sounds like this in roll speed. So that's what's going on here. And how we play this is it's played, you're going to place your pointer finger on the 12th fret of your A string, and then place your middle finger on the 12th fret of your G. And you're going to leave those 2 fingers where they are. So the pointer finger's on the 12th fret of the A, middle finger's on the 12th fret of the G. I'm going to pick my A string, and at the same time with my middle finger of my picking hand, I'm going to pluck the G so that I play those 2 notes together at the same time. And I will continue to press down firmly, and I'll let those 2 notes ring out. It will sound like this to begin the transition. And then after that, I'm going to leave those 2 fingers where they are. I'm going to stretch my pinky out to the 15th fret of my D string. I'm going to pick that note 1 time. After that, pick your pinky up off the board. You still have those first 2 notes held down. You will first pick the 12th fret of your A, then you will pluck the 12th fret of the G, and then you'll pause for a second, and then you will once again pick the 12th fret of the A, and then after that you will place your ring finger on the 13th fret of your B string. You'll pick it and play a vibrato there. And that makes up the transition. It played all together in slow. And the transition played in roll speed. And then after we play that 1 time, so we'll play the bridge 3 times like what I talked about. You'll play that transition 1 time, and then we move into the guitar solo. And now here, for the guitar solo, I'm first going to play it in roll speed, and then I'll break it down. But first, here's the guitar solo played in roll speed. Now for the guitar solo, I've broken it down into 5 parts. In part 1, we begin by taking your ring finger and placing it here on the 2nd fret of your low E string. Now what we're going to do to begin in part 1 is we're going to pick our low E string 2nd fret 1 time, and after we've picked it, you're going to slide your ring finger up to the 5th fret of your low E. So that will sound like this. Once you've gotten to the 5th fret of your low E, what we're going to do next is you're going to place your pointer finger here on the 3rd fret of your A string. Pick that note 1 time. And then following that, you're going to place your ring finger on the 5th fret of your A. You're going to pick it and then slide up to the 7th fret of your A string. That will sound like this. So far here in part 1, we have this played slow. And then what you're going to do is you're going to place your ring finger onto the 5th fret of your D string. And what's going to happen is this. I'm going to pick that note 1 time, which is the 5th fret of the D. And after I've picked it, my picking hand is out of the picture for a second. What I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to press down firmly with my ring finger. I'm going to slide up to the 7th fret, then slide back down to the 5th fret, and then slide back up to the 7th fret, and then play a vibrato. So that's going to sound like this played slow. So far we have this played slow in part 1. We have this so far. Looking at what we have from this angle here will look like this played slowly. And then what we're going to do after we have done that last thing that I talked about where we slid 4 times, then played the vibrato there on that D string. What you're going to do after that is you're going to place your pointer finger here on the 5th fret of your G. You're going to pick it once. Then you're going to place your pinky on the 7th fret of your D string. You're going to pick it and play a vibrato. So far here in part one, we have this played slow. Then after that, you're going to place your ring finger onto the 7th fret of your A string. What's going to happen is this. I'm going to pick the A string one time. After I've picked it, I'm going to slide my ring finger down 2 frets. And once I make it to the 5th fret, I'm going to place my pointer finger on the 3rd fret. And then I'm going to pull my ring finger off. So to do that slowly will sound like this. And looking at that from this angle right here, it's going to look and sound like this played slow. So I only picked it one time. Like I said, I picked the 7th fret. But something you can do that may help you is you can go ahead and put your pointer finger 2 frets behind your ring finger. And then you pick the 7th fret of your A where your ring finger is. You slide down 2 frets. Your pointer finger stays the same distance. It stays 2 frets behind your ring finger. Then you just pull off. So that's what's happening there. One more time, it played slowly. It will sound like this. And by doing that, that ends the first part of the solo. Part one played all together in slow will sound and look like this. So that's part one played slow. Part one played in roll speed. So that's part one played in roll speed. Moving into part two, it begins the same way that part one did, in the fact that we're going to begin by placing our ring finger on the 2nd fret of our low E. We'll pick it and slide up to the 5th fret. Then you'll place your pointer finger on the 3rd fret of your A, pick it one time. Then place your ring finger on the 5th fret of your A, pick it, and then slide up to the 7th fret. So far in part two, we have this played slow. And then following that, you're going to place your pointer finger onto the 5th fret of your D. You're going to pick it and then hammer on quickly to the 7th fret of your D string. It will sound like this. That hammer on, looking at that hammer on from this angle here, looks like this. So far here in part two, we have this played slow. Then what you're going to do is you're going to do that hammer on one more time. So we have this in part two played slowly. And then following that, what you're going to do is you're going to place your ring finger onto the 7th fret of your G. You're going to pick it. So it's what we're going to do here is we're going to pick it and then bend it up quickly a full step. It's going to be a quick full step bend. So it's going to help you to place your middle finger here on the 6th fret of your G, and I'll also place my pointer finger on the 5th fret of my G as well. I use those 2 fingers to help me push my ring finger up the neck. It will sound like this. And then after I've done that, I'm then going to pick the 7th fret of the G in its original spot. Then pick your ring finger up and play the 5th fret of your G. And then place your pinky onto the 7th fret of your D string. Play it once. And then place your ring finger on the 7th fret of your A and play it once. So far here in part two, we have this played slow. And then after we've done that, to end the second part, you're going to take your ring finger and place it here on the 8th fret of your B string. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the B string one time, then I'm going to slide up to the 10th fret. Once I get to the 10th fret, I will then play a vibrato there. So that's going to sound like this. And that ends part two. Part two played all together in slow. Part two played slow from this angle right here will look like this. So that's part 2 played slow from that angle there. And now here's part 2 played in roll speed. Parts 1 and 2 of the solo played together in roll speed. And now for part 3 of the solo, what you're going to do is you're going to place your ring finger here on the 10th fret of your high E string. And then you want to also place your middle finger on the 9th fret, and I'll take my pointer finger and place it on the 8th fret as well. Once again, here I'm using my pointer finger, my middle finger to help me control my ring finger. The note that we will be playing originally here to begin in part 3, we will pick the high E string. We will be playing the 10th fret. After I've picked it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it up a full step, continue to press down firmly, bring it back down, and then continue to press down firmly and bring it back up once again. So that's going to sound like this played slow. So that's what happens here. Now that's going to sound like this in roll speed. And then after we've done that, you're going to place your ring finger up one string on the 10th fret of your B. You'll pick that note and then continue to press down firmly and play a vibrato there. So far here in part 3 we had this played slow. And then after that, what you're going to do is you're going to place your pinky onto the 8th fret of your B string, and you also want to place your pointer finger on the 5th fret of your B. Now don't let my ring finger or my middle finger confuse you. They are not on the board right now. What we're fixing to do is we're going to pick the B string 8th fret where my pinky is, and right after I pick it I'm going to pull my pinky up off the board. So I'm pulling off from the 8th fret of the B to the 5th fret. It will sound like this. Looking at that pull off, looks like this from this angle right here. So far here in part 3 we have this played slowly. Then what we're going to do next is you're going to place your ring finger onto the 7th fret of your G. Once again, reinforce it with your middle finger and pointer fingers being, your middle finger being right behind it, and then your pointer finger being 2 frets behind it. What we're going to do here is we're going to pick the 7th fret of our G where our ring finger is. We're going to bend it up a full step quickly. It will sound like this. So far here in part 3 we had this played slowly. And then what we're going to do is we're then going to, you want to be sure that your pointer finger is on the 5th fret of your G, your ring finger is on the 7th fret of your G string as well. What we're going to do is we're going to pick the G string 7th fret and then pull our ring finger off. It will sound like this. And looking at that pull off from this angle here, looks like this. So far here in part 3 altogether we have this played slow. And then following that, you're going to play the 7th fret of your D string with your ring finger. So we have this all together in part 3 played slow. Then after that, you're going to place your pointer finger here on the 5th fret of your G. You'll play it and play a vibrato. Then place your pinky on the 7th fret of your D string, play it once. And then place your ring finger directly above it on the 7th fret of your A and pick that one time. And that ends part 3 of our solo. Part 3 played all together in slow. Part 3 played in roll speed. Parts 1 through 3 played in roll speed. So that's parts 1 through 3 played in roll speed. We have 2 more parts left. We move into part 4 here. What we're going to do is you're going to place your pointer finger onto the 8th fret of your B string. You'll play it 1 time. Then place your middle finger on the 9th fret of your B, play it once. And then place your ring finger on the 10th fret of your B and play it once. So we have this so far in part 4, played slow. Then after that, place your pointer finger onto the 8th fret of your high E string, play it once. And then place your ring finger onto the 10th fret of your B, play it, and then play a vibrato. So in part 4 we had this played slow. And then following that, what you're going to do is you're going to place your ring finger onto the 7th fret of your G. Once again, reinforce it with your middle finger and pointer finger. We're going to pick the 7th fret of the G and then bend it up a full step quickly. It sounds like this. And then after you've done that, you will then pick the 7th fret of your G in its original spot. Then play the 5th fret of your G with your pointer finger. Then place your pinky onto the 7th fret of your D string and play it once. And then place your ring finger on the 7th fret of your A and play it once. And that's going to end the 4th part of the solo. It played all together in slow. Part 4 played in real speed. And now parts 1 through 4 played in real speed will sound like this. And now for the 5th and final part of the solo here. What we're going to do is it begins by us placing our pointer finger on the 5th fret of our B, and then you will also place your pinky on the 8th fret of your B as well. We're going to pick the 8th fret of our B string and then pull our pinky off to the 5th fret. It will sound like this. Looking at that from this angle here, looks like this. Then after you've done that, you're going to place your ring finger on the 7th fret of your G, pick it once. Then place your pointer finger on the 5th fret of your G, play it once. And then place your ring finger back onto the 7th fret of your G string. You'll pick it here and then you'll play a vibrato. So all together here in part 5 we have this played slow. And then after that, we're going to once again pull off from the 8th fret of our B to our 5th fret. And then after that, what you're going to do is this. You're going to move up, place your ring finger here on your 7th fret at the G string. Place your middle finger on the 6th fret of your G and place your pointer finger on the 5th fret of your G as well. What we're going to do here is we're first going to bend that note up a full step. Once you have it bent up a full step, then you will pick your G string. And after you've picked it, what you're going to do is this. You're going to continue to press down firmly. You'll bring it down. And then once you get down to its original spot, you'll pull your ring finger off to the 5th fret. So that will sound like this, played slowly. And only pick that one time. Looking at that from this angle here will look like this. So that's what happens here. So far all together in the 5th and final part of the solo, we had this played slow. Then what you're going to do is you're going to place your ring finger onto the 7th fret of your G. You'll pick it and play a vibrato. So we have this so far in part 5 played slowly. And then what we're going to do is you're going to place your pointer finger here at the 5th fret of your G. You're going to pick it and hammer on to the 7th fret of your G. It will sound like this. And after you've hammered on, you will then drop your pointer finger down to the 5th fret of your B string. You'll play that once. So far all together here in part 5, we had this played slowly. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to once again play a pre-bend here at the 7th fret of our G. So what we're going to do is we're going to press down firmly on the 7th fret of our G. We'll bend it up first, a full step, and then we're ready to play. What we're going to do is we're going to pick the G string, and just as we did before, we bend the 7th fret of the G up a full step, then we pick it, we bring the note down, and then we pull off to the 5th fret of the G. So that'll sound like this. So all together here, we had this in the 5th and final part of the solo, played slow. And then what you're going to do to end the solo is you'll place your ring finger onto the 8th fret of your B string or your pinky. Actually, I use my pinky here, but you can use either one. But whichever one you choose to use, place one of the other on the 8th fret of your B. You'll pick it and then slide up to the 10th fret. And then once you get to the 10th fret, you'll play a vibrato there to end the solo. It will sound like this, played slow. And so that ends part 5. That ends the guitar solo. Part 5 played all together in slow. Looking at part 5, played slowly from this angle right here, it's going to look and sound like this. So that's the 5th and final part, played slow. Here's part 5, played in real speed. And now, once again, here is parts 1 through 5 that make up the guitar solo played in real speed. Following the guitar solo, you will then play our bridge chord progression. You'll play parts 1 and part 2 together a total of 3 times, just as we did before. And then after that, you'll play the transition that we talked about. You'll play it once. And then after that, you will play rhythm figure 1 until the song fades. And that is going to be I Don't Trust Myself with Loving You by John Mayer.